Welcome back, and we're getting ready to move into our first segment for today that is sure to be very informational.
Definitely.
In fact, this segment is actually one that was requested from one of our viewers who contacted us and said that as a young adult, she would really love to know more about the process of applying for a piece of land in Belize. So we reached out to the ministry, and you guys are here. We have with us Commissioner of Lands in the Ministry of Finance and Natural Resources, Wilbert Valemos. And we have Amin, Bobadillo, who is the National Estate Officer in the Ministry of Finance and Natural Resources. Good morning and welcome, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting us to be here.
This is definitely one of the hot topics. This will never be one of those that would eventually simmer down, because Belizeans, we feel or we know that we are entitled to a piece of land. And for folks, many a times we try, but we get turned back. We want to know, and then again, people would want to know, what is the process of getting a piece of land or applying for a piece of land?
Good morning, Belize. Thank you again, guys, for having us here and talking about this very important topic about land and land application. Land application means a lot of things to different people. There are many types of applications that the Lands and Surveys Department deals with on a daily basis. In fact, we have over 100 types of applications that people go to the department to seek service. But what we're going to talk today is about an application for national land. How does somebody apply for land, and then how does somebody qualify, and how somebody eventually gets the approval for the land. The Lands and Surveys Department is a big department, and going back to your quote of the day, I was really inspired by it this morning. It has many aspects of it, and today we're going to talk about the national land aspect of the Lands and Surveys Department. But how does somebody apply for national land? We have with us here the National Estate Officer, who is responsible for that aspect of the Lands and Surveys Department, and he will tell us very briefly how does one apply for land? What is the criteria, and then what is the process that they go through?
All right. Well, when it comes to national land, good morning, Dewi. Anyone can apply for land once you are Belizean and 18 years or older. Once you meet that criteria, then you can visit the Lands Department and make the application. The process at the moment presently is automated. We can look at the process in 4 steps. The accepting of the application, the processing of the application, the approval, and the recording. Now, when you make an application, you can either visit one of our 7 offices countrywide, one of the headquarters, and 6 district offices. The application basically stays at the front desk for 1 or 2 days for it to being accepted once you meet all the requirements. Then it moves into the processing of application, whereby we look at the land details, the land availability, the gathering of the information, and the field visit to ensure that the land is available. Once that information is gathered, that goes to the minister for recommendation and for approval. Whatever decision is made, that decision is recorded at the final stage, whereby you are advised if your application was approved or not. Under normal circumstances, this application would take approximately 45 days. But there are some instances whereby the information is not readily available. We'll have to visit many other sections and many other institutions, such as the Archives Department, to confirm and to ensure that what we're issuing is indeed national land and we're not issuing somebody else's land. And that is one of our mandate at the Lands Department, to ensure the security of tenure. So once you're Belizean, 18 years or older, you can make an application to the Lands
So that's
Department.
the basic eligibility requirement.
Yes.
All right. And tell us a bit about the application process. What type of information are you asking for within the application?
Well, we're asking evidence of you being the first person applying for the land, your name, you're a citizen of Belize, proof of that. We're asking for your demographic information, address, your first signature, basically family, area, your interest of where you want to apply. So that is basically what is expected from you. The land details basically is what we provide, and based on your interest that you are indicating to us.
So you will have to indicate a particular area that you're interested in.
Most of the time, the applicant that comes to the office knows where they want to apply.
Oh.
In fact, there are a lot of people who are in actual occupation of
Yeah.
land, people who have been for generations living on a parcel of land, and it has been passed on from their grandparents to them informally, because obviously they didn't have any
Without ownership.
documents. And so when they come to the lands department to apply for land, they already have the land information, and it's just a matter of regularization. But you have those persons who have no land, have no idea where land
they
is
want to,
available,
yeah.
and so the department will have to be in a position to help them and guide them or direct them and say, well, are you interested in north, south, east, or west, and narrow it down so that it is easier for us to help and provide the assistance. Now it sounds so easy and pretty and smooth, but it has not always been like that. And it's important for people to understand the healing process that we're going through. Again, going back to your quote of the day. The Lands and Surveys Department has, for many decades, worked in a fragmented way. Like, for example, the National Estate Office felt that they had to operate in isolation of the rest. And so when they used to process applications, they didn't do the necessary checkups to ensure that the lands are available, and many times duplicated people's tenure and resulted in duplication, court, and compensation. So what we're doing now, and what we're doing, we have recognized that we can't operate like that. Everybody must talk to each other. Everybody must get the information and provide information to the necessary person. So at the end of the day, what we want to do is have a national land inventory. We need to know what we own. The government needs to know what they own.
So there's no such existing document?
We don't have a complete reliable inventory.
Okay.
Let's put it that way, because for years, like I said, we were operating in a very fragmented way, and the records were not brought together or reconciled in a way that they can be accessed through one consolidated information system. We have our information system, but we need to input data now so that then it can be accessed the proper way. So that is very important, because once we have our land inventory completed, we will know for sure where lands are available, where people can get land, where we can make lots for residents, for commercial use, for agriculture use, for those people who are really landless, who are really first-time landowners, because at this point in time, we want to give priority to the people who don't have. We have found it also in the past that those who applied were people who already had. And we're not saying that those who don't have can't get, because if you are a farmer and you are running being successful in your farming, you would want to expand. There's nothing wrong with you having 100 acres and you want to get 20 more and 50 more because you want. But then somebody like anybody who wants a 20 acres agricultural land to start some sort of farming is also eligible, is also somebody that we have to provide information and help with.
You know, I think what you're saying is very important, because it's something we never learn the process for. And I think families who do know the process pass it on to their younger ones so they can ensure that they go in and apply, even as a first-time landowner. But a lot of people, and understanding the issues we've seen with natural resources, feel a bit dissuaded that perhaps I'm going to go in and I don't stand a chance, or my application form will get lost, or so. I think because of that perception, it really is a time, and we appreciate the question from our Facebook from our viewer, because I think it shows that there still is an interest, and from a very young person as well. So talking about how somebody is approved, what is the process? Does it matter their income? Does it matter? And you were talking a bit about prior land ownership. What are some of the things that you look at to be able to approve somebody's land ownership?
Okay, the National Estate Officer explained the different parts of the entire process. And an application, to be able to apply, you need to be a Belizean and of age, and you can apply. You may apply. Nobody.
That's it, nothing else.
We can't stop anybody from applying for land. Now, to be eligible and to qualify for an approval of the application, we look at several things. We look, first of all, whether or not you are a first-time landowner. So there are more checks being done on the applicant itself when the application is being processed and before it is forwarded to the minister. And we provide a listing of all the properties that the applicant has, but also that the applicant had, because it's important to know that the person who is applying for land isn't speculating and isn't into the buying and selling of land, or isn't hiding behind something and just using it as a forefront. We look at the person's ability to develop the land. So we do look at income in a sense. So as a matter of fact, when they apply for agriculture land, for example, and they apply for anything in excess of 25 acres, they have to provide a development plan. And in that development plan, we look for three things: the type of development that you want to do on the land, the duration of your development, and then the availability of finance. How are you going to finance your development? We also look at whether or not you are somebody who is resident as opposed to somebody who is not resident. Not to put anybody at a disadvantage, but the people who are here are readily available to first priority. And we also now are looking at how much the applicant owes the government of Belize, because and that's why we're working together in that aspect, because if somebody has 10 parcels of land and they're applying for one more, and they say, well, they put a pretty development plan and justify everything, and they provide the finance. Finance is not a problem for them. When you look at their history of other records, you know that they have long, outstanding sums of arrears to the government. Then that will put them in a situation where, okay, you have to deal with that first before you come and try to get for land. So those are some of the things that we look at and make recommendations to the minister. We, as the technocrats, are responsible for gathering all the data, all the information, putting it into a report and providing the information to the minister, who can then look at all the data that is given and make the best decision at the end of the day. Everything lies in the discretion of the minister to approve or reject an application.
One of the things that we continue to hear is that, as much as you've explained that there is a process and it actually takes a few days, a few weeks, a few months, one of the things that we continue to hear is that you have to be behind the lands department so as to get your situation dealt with. Why does this continue to happen, even though we're explaining right now that there is a process for it?
Well, like most processes, it needs to be monitored. Different, and when you look at the lands department, as mentioned before, it has several functions, and every function is particular, specific to a unit, who has a unit head. And like explained earlier, these units for decades have been operating in isolation of each other. There is no communication. There wasn't a monitoring of what they do, of holding people responsible of the applications that they have accepted from persons, and then asking for the necessary feedback and reports on those. We recognize that people operate the systems, people that sometimes have their own agenda, people that have their own reasons why they are where they are, supervisors who are busy doing other things but supervising. And we then recognize that when all of those things happen, then what ought to be happening, processing the person's application within the time frame that the National Estate Officer reported that it must be done, doesn't get done. And so you have people frustrated, people walking up and down in the lands department with no clear direction of where they need to go, who they need to see to have their matter done and resolved. So we recognized that that was predominant in the lands department. That was a culture, if we can call it. And so to fix that, we introduced the customer service unit. It's a fairly new unit, and a lot of people don't even know that we have one. But we have a customer service unit who is responsible for receiving these types of complaints, for reporting these types of situations, to say, you know what, I've been to a particular officer for 10 times and I'm not getting anywhere. Could you kindly point out where I need, and then she takes it, and the customer service reports to the CEO. She doesn't even report to the land commissioner.
Okay.
She reports to the CEO and offers these independent reports about officers who are in non-compliance of the established regulations and protocols. And then these matters are channeled to the minister so that she knows who is and who isn't complying. So that doesn't eliminate the situation, but it reduces significantly the chance for officers to behave like this with the applicants of national
It gives
land.
people an outlet, somewhere to go if things aren't working out their way. You know, it is a process, I think, that people perhaps don't undertake, and they should at least should attempt. The application process, you said, is now automated. Is this something that's accessible online? Can people go on the website and be able to get the application process and start it off there?
It depends on the type of the application.
Okay.
And specifically for national land, the application form is digital, and you'll have to be in person at the front desk, because we require that to confirm that indeed it's you that's applying for the land. That we capture your original signature, because if you're not present, then we cannot capture all of that information. At that point, we are capturing that information based on an interview and based on an information sheet. And if you are abroad or somewhere else, then that information is going to be much difficult for us to capture.
Now, during this 45-day application verification, is there like a call up, or is there a call up to that applicant saying, you know what, we're in process, it's day 30 and so on? One of the reasons why I ask this is because I think this would be one of the situations that eventually put people or have people go to the land department to make all the noise. So is there a call up, or is there a way whereby folks from the lands department liaise with those who have applied just to make the situation a little more subtle?
We have recently, recently is like in the last 3-4 weeks, introduced this practice of calling people and telling them about the status of their application, or that their application has been approved, because a lot of people don't even aren't even aware that they have gotten an approval or a response to their application. And so when we gather the data, we get people's email address and cell phone number, and we recently started to call them. Some of them have called in the airwaves to say that they got a call from the lands department, which is a very strange thing to happen in their opinion, but they're very thankful that it happened. And so we're not there yet, but we're introducing that as a way of telling people that and showing people that we are serious about their applications. If you have come to the department and you have filed an application and you have spent your time and you have spent your $5 or your $10 to apply for land, we are serious about your application. And so we call them for many things. Maybe something is missing, or maybe it's completed, or maybe they're doing a site visit. As a matter of fact, the matter of inspections and visiting and investigations, and so we do call people for that. We do that from Belmopan because we have discovered also that there was some mischief happening on behalf of the employees of the department with inspection. People are charging unnecessary fees, and so we centralized the coordination of inspections. And so when the department deploys a team to go and do a sweep or a project in a particular district, the officer responsible calls the landowner and says, we will be there and such a time, we expect you to be present so that you can answer some of the questions that we may have.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that that has happened.
Yeah. Now, you know, I think one of the things that people pay attention to is when someone is issued a land and it remains undeveloped. You know, you spoke about that being a part of the eligibility criteria. What are the follow-ups done by the lands department to be able to ensure that if you issue me a piece of property or a parcel of land somewhere, and I just never do anything with it, what happens after that?
Well, when somebody is issued a parcel of land, many times people don't understand that it is a lease. They don't even know what is the difference between a lease and a title, a freehold, and people think that it is theirs to hold forever and ever, and so the government can't do anything to them, which is not necessarily so. When you get your lease, you should abide by certain terms and conditions of the lease, like rent, how much rent you pay, how much time you have to develop, how much money you must invest on the land, etc. And if it does not happen, then the department would send you a notice and tells you you're in breach of condition A, B, or C. You have to remedy the breach. If you don't, then your lease is subject to being forfeited or cancelled.
Okay. So what happens
How
when...
often does that happen, though?
It rarely happens, and usually we find that a particular land is in that situation when somebody else comes to apply. Let's say, for example, you're in a particular village and you've spotted this land that has been untouched, undeveloped for the last 10 years, and so you become interested in the land. So you come to the department and say, you know what, I want to apply for that land. When we accept your application and we start the processing, we realize, but somebody has a lease for the land. And when we check the records of the land, we find the person hasn't paid anything for the last 10 years and hasn't done anything on the land. So at that point in time, we start the communication with that tenant before we even do anything with your application.
What about if in a process like that or in a situation like that whereby it's not actually lease, it's actually property? The individual probably had passed away. There is nothing dealt with on the land. Years has passed by. What then happens? Well, if somebody is interested in that piece of land?
When it is freehold, when it is private property, the department, the Lands and Service Department, the government of Belize can't really dispose of it. And the only person who can dispose of it is the owner. Who is not the government, it's the private individual. If the person passes away, then it becomes part of his estate. And then some family member needs to apply to the courts and get letters of administration to be able to administer that estate and pass it on, sell it, mortgage it, pass it on to whoever it needs to be passed on. So even when the land is developed, even undeveloped, the government can say, well, you have a title, you haven't developed it, so we'll take your title back and we'll give it to you. That it's not for the government to dispose of, so the government ought not to do that.
Even without the payment for over the amount of years, 13, 14 years?
The department can recover the land in lieu of taxes owed, but there is a process. It's a lengthy process. It becomes legal. You have to go to you have to serve notices. You have to go to the courts, and many times it just is prolonged because of what you need to go through to get it back in lieu of taxes. But that would be the only way that the government is owed a lot of money, and so the government tries to recover the arrears through that.
So what happens following, okay, I got the call saying, okay, John, you have been granted, your land have been granted, your application is successful. What happens then?
What happens then is that you need to recognize that you have a lease and that you have certain obligations within the lease. You as the applicant and the recipient of the lease need to understand that. And you also need to understand that if you don't comply and abide with, your lease may be subject to cancellation. So you need to take possession of your land. You need to go start clean, find the markers. If you don't have it, come to the lands department. We'll carry you and show you where they are. Plant something visible so that your neighbors can see that your lot starts from here and it ends there. Put up a sign that says something, my land or something, but make some sort of presence on the land, because it is when you don't do that that people become interested on your land. You also need to know that you have to pay the government for an annual fee, the rental fee. You also need to know that your lease has a beginning and it has an end, and you need to ensure that before it ends, you come back to the government, to engage the government, to say, you know what, I have complied with my conditions, I'm ready to buy. Or I'm not interested in buying because I don't have the money, but I'm interested in getting a new lease or an extended term of the lease. That is what you need to know when you get this document from the government.
Is there also a processing, outside of the lease payment, the fees, is there a processing fee that people have to pay?
The only fees that we can call the processing fee would be the application fees. There is no fee for field inspection, there is no fee for investigation, there is no fee for moving your application all the way to the approval. The fees that we can consider is the application fee for $5 worth of postage stamp when you make a lease application. And when you are ready to purchase your land, you need to provide a $10 worth of postage stamp to make that application. So basically those are the fees when applying for national land.
Now, Wilbert, I appreciate you've spoken quite a bit about new developments within the department in trying to ensure that Belizeans get the best possible service when they go in for these type of processes. We also know that there has been a continuous practice of having area reps and caretakers be the one to apply. I don't know the process that they take when they go to the lands department, but we'll have somebody in their constituency and say, don't worry, I'll get you a piece of land, and it happens. What are the mitigation efforts being put into effect now that there's no political interference when this process is being undertaken?
The minister herself, the current minister, Dr. Carla Barnett, had said on live television that to apply for land, you need to be a Belizean and 18 years of age, and that there is no requirement for anybody to provide a recommendation from any minister, any standard bearer, or any caretaker. However, if the person brings it because the person is able to get it, then we take it and accept it and put it in the file, but we will not turn anybody who comes to apply for land and does not have a recommendation from a politician.
So you do not need a recommendation to apply?
We do not need a recommendation to apply.
So when you go in for the process, because you already said it has to be an in-person process, you have to physically present yourself, and when you're there, you won't be asked for any recommendations.
No.
As a matter of fact, we have a submission list, checklist that applicants can get from our office that will tell them what it is that they need to bring when they're applying. And a recommendation from an area representative or standard bearer is not on that submission checklist.
Can people access that information online, at least the submission list?
Currently not. We're almost there. We're working on our website. Some of the information there is not updated, but we're working on that, and certain applications and forms we will make available online. Others, like the one for the lease application, not as yet, because we want to be able to establish a first contact with the person. But we're looking into that in the very near future.
Are there any other misconceptions that you hear very often about the application process for national land?
Well, yes. And it has to do with the fees. The National Estate Officer said that, and it's important for people to know that the only fee that they pay when they apply for land before they wait for an approval is the postage stamp fee. There is a misconception, there's a misunderstanding on the general public that they must pay for other things. You must pay for a research, you must pay for an inspection, you must pay for your queue to move from one place to another place, and then it becomes burdensome on them. The public needs to understand that that is not so, and the department will not has done tremendous efforts to not allow for things like that to happen, and that if they knowingly now do something like that, then they are also committing a felony along with that public officer. Also, the misunderstanding about the recommendations. It is certain, because we found it in certain instances, and even when we communicate this to applicants, when people reach at our counters, they are still frustrated by some of the personnel there because they are still requesting these recommendations, even when we have said it and even we have communicated to them, they're still, and so people will say, but you were on television telling and saying that we don't. But when we go to your office at your different counters, they are asking for us to provide it. So where do we go? I mentioned earlier we have a customer service number, E28 5181, and so they can call and they can report those incidents right then and there, because that's not true. And
so get the name of the officer that's taking your application.
Exactly, and then we will deal with that situation.
So you must be Belizean.
Must be Belizean.
You must be 18. You have a application fee that is $5. $5 for postage stamp, for stamp duty, and you do not require bringing in a recommendation form from any politician, any caretaker, any area rep.
That's right.
What information do you have to bring?
You bring, obviously you need to bring your personal information. You need to bring
your
IDs and the originals.
Okay.
Because we take copies and then we certify that we have taken the originals. Some people bring certified copies of their documents. We try not to accept them as much as possible for applications for national lands, because getting a certified copy of something that looks original is very easy to do nowadays.
So original identification.
Documentations. If they have the details of the land that they want to apply for, we need to know. Many times people will not know the nitty-gritty of things, but they will know that they want to apply for a land in Cristo Rey, Cayo. So they need to know that, we need to know that, and then we can help them narrow down to the specific land. If they're applying for agricultural land in excess of 25 acres, they need to bring their development plan, and they need to make sure that they tell us those three things that I mentioned, at least. The finest part, the length of the development, and the type of the development. If they are applying for, if it's a company that's applying, they need to provide the company documents, the articles of association, the certificate of good standing, and the list of the directors, so that we know who we are dealing with, and if they are in fact a legitimate person.
And then the average processing time is 45 days.
That's the average processing time. We have, I know at this point in time, the general public is a little bit frustrated because we have added an additional step during inspection research, and it is the preparation of an abstract of parcel, which we found necessary to do. As mentioned earlier by the National Estate Officer, a lot of errors were being done in the past because the due diligence or the in-depth research was not conducted. We have lands in this country that titles were issued in the 1800s, early 1900s. When titles were issued then, surveys, the physical land survey wasn't done the way it is done now. It was done with chains and links and rods and some very vague description, so that if with your naked eye you look at an area, you may not be able to see that somebody has a title as old as the 1900s. So the in-depth research is required to go to the root and see when was the very first time that a parcel was ever surveyed in whichever form, and dig. So we have to go many times to the archives department, go through very old documents. But that is just to ensure that when you get your title, or when the minister signs off on it, you're not going to end up in court. You're not going to end up with somebody harassing you because you're cleaning their land and things like that. But it's an in-depth process, and so a lot of research is required for that. But I want the public to understand also that it's like putting the puzzle together. So at some point in time, we would have all the information for every area in the country. And so the research at some point in time will not have to be as in-depth as it is right now.
And you can apply for your personal use, you can apply for as a company, you can apply for agricultural purposes, and it is all the same application process.
Same application process.
Same application
All
process.
right. So, well, we appreciate you coming in and demystifying this process. And hopefully, you know, as you said it, Wilbert, you've said all these things on TV, so people will come back and say, you said I didn't need X, Y, and Z, and hopefully your officers will respond to that. But I want you to give you the opportunity to close off and just say why Belizeans should be encouraged to come in and attempt the process. Because at this point, I think people just don't bother.
Well, first of all, I kind of understand why people don't bother, because they, in their minds, some of them haven't visited the lands department in years, so they don't know what changes have happened over the course of time. And if they still have that last experience of the lands department, they don't want to be bothered. They don't want to go and catch a long line. They don't want to be pushed around. They don't want to be sent from one place to the other. So they don't want to go there, period. So they hire somebody to do it on their behalf, and that somebody isn't necessarily doing things in their best interest, and so somebody find an opportunity to take money from them and don't deliver. We want to encourage people to come to the lands department and have a first-hand experience of the changes that we have done, and be part of the healing process. We are now more integrated. Our customer service unit is there to help. We have all the services along a counter under one roof, so you don't have to be all over the place. Your next person is very close to you to be able to offer the service. But we also want to be able to capture the person's information. We've had so many cases of fraud, so many cases of identities being stolen. People somehow or the other get somebody's ID, fabricate a letter of authorization, copy the ID, have a GP to sign it so it looks authentic, come to the department, apply for land, sell it. Next thing you know, the person didn't even know that he had a lease or a title. So we want to be able to get that first-time information from applicants, get their signature because it goes in our system so we can check it every time a transaction comes. We want to be able to interview them because that's an opportunity for them to be interviewed. But we also want to be able to share with them their responsibilities. We want to tell them you're applying for land, and when you get it, just like I mentioned earlier, this is what is expected for you. We want to be able to tell them the difference between a lease and a title. When they're far away, they don't necessarily get an opportunity to hear these things from the Lands and Surveys Department. So that's why we would really want to encourage people to do it themselves. There are situations and certain applications that they can't authorize people to do that, but that first lease application, we want to encourage them to do it personally.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in.
Big thanks.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go ahead and take a break now, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the medical readiness training exercise being conducted through the U.S. Embassy, so stay tuned.